From the moment the doctors told Alexander Hale that his newborn triplets might never walk, the world around him seemed to crumble like thin glass. A man known for building skyscrapers, for investing in impossible dreams, suddenly found himself powerless against the one thing he wanted most, to see his sons stand on their own feet. For months he watched them struggle to move even their tiny toes, watched therapists shake their heads with pity, and watched hope slip through his fingers day by day. And yet, despite all the wealth, all the technology, all the experts, Alexander couldn't shake the fear that he was failing as a father. It was that fear that eventually drove him to install hidden cameras in the nursery. He needed to know if the maid he had recently hired, Grace, was caring for his sons the way he wished he could. But he never expected what those cameras would reveal. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us what it means to be human, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Everyday Heroes. Your support helps these stories reach more hearts. Each morning, Alexander left for work before the sun had time to warm the nursery windows. His sons, Elliot, Emmett, and Evan, sat in their wheelchairs, always smiling, always trying, even though their legs had never supported their weight. He hated leaving them, hated the guilt that clawed at him knowing money wasn't enough to heal them. Grace, the maid, had been hired quickly, almost out of desperation. She was quiet, gentle, and always humming some soft melody, but something about her calm confidence made Alexander uneasy. He didn't know whether she cared too little or cared too much, and a man who'd seen betrayal in business wasn't ready to trust someone new with the only thing he truly loved. The footage on the cameras began as routine. Grace feeding the boys. Grace tidying their toys. Grace adjusting their blankets. But then something strange caught Alexander's attention. Grace began placing small rubber mats in the center of the nursery floor every afternoon, right after lunch. She would roll back the boys' wheelchairs and kneel on the hardwood with a patience that seemed almost impossible. Every day, she would lift each child into her arms, one at a time, holding them steady as she stretched their legs and massaged their tiny feet. The doctors had told Alexander that therapy might help, but they had never shown this level of devotion or creativity. Grace gently guided the boys' legs as if believing movement could be taught the same way one teaches a song. Alexander watched more footage. Day after day, Grace pushed her own limits as she pushed theirs. She held their arms, let their weight rest on her shoulders, and helped them attempt tiny steps so shaky, so trembling, that it made Alexander's heart tighten until he couldn't breathe. And all of this she did without knowing a single camera was watching. Not for praise, not for payment, not for recognition. Only for 3 children who had never known the feeling of standing. One rainy afternoon, something extraordinary happened. Alexander sat in his office, staring at the security screen like he had every day for weeks, when he noticed an unusual brightness in Grace's expression. She set Elliot on the mat first, her hands firm on his sides, and whispered something he couldn't hear. Elliot's little fingers curled with determination. Grace stepped back an inch. Just an inch. Elliot wobbled, teetering forward, then managed to put one foot ahead of the other before falling into her arms with a burst of laughter that filled the room even through the speakers. Alexander froze. His son, his paralyzed son, had taken a step. In the video, Grace didn't celebrate for herself. She held Elliot close, tears shimmering on her cheeks as if she were the one healed. Next she lifted Emmett, then Evan, repeating the same gentle encouragement. She stayed patient through their stumbles, calm through their frustrations, until slowly, miraculously, each one managed a step. They weren't walking yet, not truly, but they were moving. And sometimes, hope was nothing more than movement. Alexander could barely hold himself together. All this time he had been drowning in guilt, thinking he wasn't enough, that he couldn't save his sons. Meanwhile, the woman he barely trusted had been giving them what money couldn't, belief. Real, patient, sacrificial belief. That evening, he rushed home, heart racing like he was chasing time itself. When he entered the nursery, he expected to find Grace standing proudly beside the boys. Instead, he found her exhausted on the floor, breathing through a tired smile as the triplets giggled around her, their legs trembling from the effort of trying. He didn't reveal the cameras. He didn't mention what he saw. He simply watched from the doorway as Grace clapped and encouraged the boys to try again, even though her own arms trembled with fatigue. It was in that moment that he realized something he never expected: the greatest heroes are often the quiet ones, the ones whose kindness isn't shouted but lived. Days turned into weeks, and soon the boys began standing longer, taking more steps, and laughing louder than ever before. Alexander joined their sessions, learning from Grace, supporting his sons, becoming the father he always wanted to be. And though Grace never knew her efforts had been recorded, millions would one day know her story, because everyday heroes deserve to be seen. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Everyday Heroes. Your engagement helps spread hope to someone who needs it today. Before the ending, tell us in the comments, would you call Grace an everyday hero? In the end, Alexander realized that miracles don't always come from science or wealth. Sometimes, they come from the quiet courage of someone who chooses love over limitation. And in the warm light of that nursery, where 3 little boys learned to take their first steps, a billionaire finally understood the priceless power of kindness.